There comes a moment in life when we realize that we were not going to be able to do everything we want. There simply isn't time for that. Something will always come up, and our plans will change, whether by choice or not. But everything always goes as planned, just not our plan. As a friend once told me, life happens. Day after day, what we want changes. So why not focus on what really matters and let go of the distractions? Let go of your desire to do everything. These are mere earthly attachments. Love goes beyond attachment, so long as it's not confused with control. The Space Odyssey and the Bloody Thriller both stem from the same place. The mind of the writer, sitting at his desk, wondering, do I write a sci-fi or do I write a horror? Or do I start a food blog, write a poem, play Minecraft? What next? What next? That's the question. There comes a moment in every day, after a long silence or a long period of continuous activity, when one must ask the dreaded question, what next? And this is Sisyphus, right? This is Sisyphus once he gets to the top of his mountain. What next? For a mind unlimited in its capacity for ideas is equally limited in their capacity to exercise such ideas. Constantly, the mind is flooded with a never-ending stream of suggestions to what's next. But that's the fun part. The bad part is choosing what's next. Choosing one idea kills, shuns, or temporarily neglects the others. Yet, all ideas are sacred, aren't they? If all life was truly sacred, the Buddhist would starve. Likewise, the philosopher lives a life of despair, constantly suffering a great loss, the loss of all possible lives. Sometimes we become attached to the idea that we are something or that we must do something. For instance, since high school, I've had the belief that I want to be a writer. Because of that, writing has always felt like something I must do. It became something I need to practice and continually do, but it isn't. I don't need to be a writer. I don't need to be anything. I'm just attached to the idea, and because of that, I'm enslaved to the idea. I feel guilty if I don't write. I feel incompetent if I don't have anything to write. And maybe I simply don't need to write. The truth is, I'm not a writer. I just like to write, and I want to do it for a living. And maybe writing just isn't what I need to do right now. Perhaps ideas aren't coming to me precisely because I'm supposed to be doing something else right now. And alas, man must slay his dragon, but likewise he must learn to walk away from its corpse. The flames rise, and we are addicted to its heat, inferno, but the slash of the sword ends it all. What now? Asks the knight. What now? Must he continue slaying dragons even if he's tried and can't find any more to slay? O serpent, feed me your flames. I've let them consume me 1,000 times, and I'll let them 1,000 more. Paint me black with charcoal and boil my blood. I walk the way of water, so not even the sun can rid me of my life. I'm ever changing and wholly adaptable, so strike me again and again. It is no use, for I shall always face you. Your dead body will only mean the death of another. Move on, says the Buddhist. Attachment forces action. It causes one to go against the current, against the stream. But life goes with the stream, not against it. Life flows down the path of least resistance. And this is not to be confused with what is easy, but rather what is natural. Attachment and desire exist as leaves in a gutter, clogging the flow of rainwater. A to-do list can be infinite, but a man can only do a finite number of things. Yet we attach ourselves to things that may have felt natural at one point, but go against the stream of our life now. I need to do this. I am this. Are those the words of your heart or of your ego? And what is the ego but our attachment to a past self? Our attachment to an image of ourselves in which we just keep on conjuring. Life is not a prison. I am not trapped by anything. I'm not trapped by the suffering in my life, the struggles, or friends, or finances, or family, or my job. I'm trapped. I'm trapped by a God I've propped up inside my head, and that God is me. I've worshipped this God for a long time now, and I've gone to hell because of it. It's not about me or what I think I want. It's not about being great or having superpowers. But there is greatness in being good and power in being powerless. So here I'm talking about the ego as a God that we worship. We worship ourselves, what we want, our own selfish desires. We worship that. A lot of people worship that. And it brings us down. We want to be great. But as, again, I've mentioned this guy so many times, Chris Ryan, I once emailed him and asked him a question once, and he told me a really good piece of insight. He said, don't be incredible, be credible. Don't be great, be good, right? Because there's greatness in being good, power in being powerless. The man who killed God is the man who managed to slay his ego, the ideal version of himself that he created, worshipped, and inevitably became enslaved by. God, in this sense, is the false God of the self, the ego. Today, most people are ruled by their ego. They're ruled by what they believe to be themselves, but it's not. For there is no self. There is no Greg. There is only this experience playing out at my fingertips, beyond my eyes, within my mind, and through my ears. I'm here, not Greg. Greg is a symbol. Here is an experience. Life is experience, not symbols. And so the slayer of God slays symbols to return to life. You'll become like us. And this, I'm quoting Genesis here, the gods talking to Adam and Eve. Does not mean that knowledge turns men into gods, but rather it causes men to believe that they are gods themselves. It is a conception of the ego. In so doing, man leaves grace. He leaves God. He leaves goodness, abandons him. And it is not that man left the garden, but rather he could no longer see it. Blinded by the knowledge of the self, God was invisible, and within him, the garden too. And this garden is used as a metaphor here, right? And whenever I talk about Genesis, I talk about it in a metaphor. The metaphor of gaining consciousness, becoming conscious of thinking that we know what life is, think that we know what good and evil is, right? And when we get knowledge, we're blinded of the beauty of life a lot of times. Our words blind us of reality. Genesis can be applied to any new human being. We all start off in the garden, but then we learn our name. It is then that our attention goes inward, away from all creation. More or less, what I'm trying to say is just do what feels natural. Don't force anything. Then again, it took forcing myself to come here to write all this. So who knows? Life is confusing. Does this feel right? Am I being a good person? These are the fundamental questions of philosophy. Because you can question your existence, but only action moves you forward through time. Know when it's time to move on.